So first of all, thank you to IMAI for organizing this and for having us at this splendid Geo Convention Center. I think we were just talking amongst ourselves how fantastic this entire center is and really state of the art. So look forward to this conversation. So the topic for us is the opportunity for Indian institutions beyond India. And we have a very distinguished set of panelists. I'll, of course, would like to sort of welcome all of them, and they're all co-founders and leaders in the space of executive education and helping Indians access education abroad, quality education abroad. And over the next half an hour, what we will be discussing is A, opportunities for Indian institutions, Indian executive institutions abroad to tap into the global market. What is it that we need to do in India to be able to facilitate this? And how do we sort of compete with the global giants, right? So would like to sort of start with you. And just very quickly, I mean, if you look at where we are today in terms of education as a business service, what is it that executive education institutions like yourself are doing in terms of enhancing that quality of education abroad, and how can we take that forward?
Thanks so much. So we work with international universities and Indian universities. Of course, where we work with we work with MIT, Columbia, Harvard, the big universities. So where we're working with the large US universities, attracting students is fairly straightforward. However, when we work with the Indian universities like the IIMs, ISB, etc., there the markets where we are able to get students for them outside India are essentially Indian diaspora, right? And the challenge for these schools is to attract students who are not Indian diaspora, and that's something we're working with them on. We have a few ideas, but it's still, I would say, early days on that front. Yeah.
Piyush, you do a lot of training, and I think you work with students, you help them upskill them, build their capacity so that they can apply and access education abroad. So what are the gaps do you see in India with respect to those education, quality of education institutions? Because I think what we also want to understand is what do we need to do in India for Indian institutions to be able to access that market? I mean, there is a reason why students are leaving India and accessing quality education abroad, right? Definitely, there is a demand-supply aspect here. And we have so many students, we may not have enough institutions. But if I flip the coin and if I say, okay, foreign students, and if they want to access quality education, which are the Indian institutions which can, get into the game, and how can we get that level increased?
Yeah, thanks, Kazim, again for having me here. And I think when I looked at the topic, I think it was opportunities for Indian institution or students in the outside market. I think the first thought that comes with a very capitalistic mindset is that the opportunity to make money, right? And I think in the space that we are, I think the opportunity, how and Sumeet will agree, and a lot of people who are especially helping the students who are looking to go abroad, we look at that opportunity as changing lives, and the opportunity for somebody to move out of that ceiling that exists probably in their current ecosystem, and can they have a career jump or an economic jump somewhere else in the world. And I think that's the mission, that's the opportunity that we are focusing on. And as you rightly mentioned, there are about 32 to 40 million Indian students who are looking for higher education every year. Now, for a student pool of that size, and in the morning, a lot of panels have been talking about the demographic dividend. I think to realize that demographic dividend, unless you are channelizing your demographic in the right direction, that is impossible to achieve. And hence, any and every solution required for skilling our youth and giving access to them for employment opportunities, an opportunity to utilize that skill, and that could be anywhere in the world. And hence, Indian institutions, and some of them are doing a fantastic job. And Indian economy is growing really fast. We're the fastest growing economies, and we need all the talent in the world. But we have a lot of surplus talent, which is unable to compete in the in the race in India. And I think that's where I feel that, not saying that the Indian institutions are bad, but there is just too many students. And I think we as India, having that demographic dividend right now, owe it to the world to supply high quality talent to all the economies and the countries, around the world. And mostly it has been limited to the English speaking countries so far, but I think that's a trend which is very, very rapidly changing. And we were discussing, Mohan and I, about Japan and, countries in Europe, which are,
Germany,
attracting
France.
Germany, France, and a lot of these countries, which are attracting international talent to fuel their economies. So I think Indian education system, I think it needs to be more linked to employment. And I think that's where some of the universities are doing a fantastic job, both public and private. A lot of the new age skilling up companies are doing a fantastic job in trying to make them linking their skills to the employment. But I think there's still a long way to go. Part of the solution is enabling those students having access to international jobs. Uh, to your last point around, how do you open that opportunity for Indian institutions to go abroad? And first IIT has been opened in Africa, and there are branches of various Indian private universities around the world. Right, Dubai has become a center, a hub where a lot of Indian population looking for work. Getting an India-based education or Indian system education so that they can be employed, their children can be employed back in India. So there's an opportunity space out there. But I think if we really want international students to either come into India, then we need to be able to offer them similar kind of opportunities that Indian students expect when they move abroad. Also from the Indian universities setting up campuses around the world,
Right.
I think they need to be abreast first with the kind of curriculum that is being taught and the needs of the student in that market. I think that is the first thing that which we really need to understand better before we take that leap of going and starting Indian institutions branches around the world.
Sumit, I want to just sort of take on from there. And I think what we're trying to understand is how do we export Indian education services and how do we maximize opportunities there? So, of course, there's a very strong business, economics, commercial angle to that. And at the end of the day, we are competing with global universities, right? We're competing with the Harvards and the Oxfords of the world. In the global rankings, our universities are behind. And, we've seen, nations put a lot of emphasis on better quality education domestically so that, you start attracting students to come in. And then these institutions can set up branches abroad. So where do you see the gaps right now in terms of Indian institutions competing with global institutions, right? I mean, is it research quality? Is it the faculty quality? Is it that there needs to be a lot more technical, nuanced in research, so the investments have to be made? What is it that we are lacking right now? So as we know, there are institutions which are being set up, but let's say if I were to say, can we have an IIT in London or an IIM? I think there's an IIM in Dubai, which we were talking about previously. But can we have an IIM in New York? Which people go and attend? They call if they sort of compete to get a seat. How long will it take for us to get there?
How long, I don't know. But yeah, I think there are a lot of think tanks working on this part. So I'll just give some of my perspective over this. First thing is that why should we have to compete with them? Why don't we join with them? And I think NEP, the new NEP policy does mention about this, that a lot of international universities can come together in India to provide this education. So I feel we have to collaborate with them and not just look at it as compete with them. The funding aspect, what you mentioned about, I think there is no comparison on that funding part. So we should not go all out on that part of competing, but rather figure a way how they can invest with us, how India is a fantastic market, how we can be a great place for experiments for these universities over here, how we can set up labs over here. There are a lot of problems which are very nuanced to India. How can we explore those parts? India, there is Indian diaspora almost everywhere in the world right now. And there are a lot of culturally, I would not call it superior, but different things where people appreciate about India. We will have to probably export those parts of it. why do we have to compete on the game which the Western countries are competing on? So that I think is the first thing. Second, I think is the research money. Unless we get great amount of research happening, there is no way we will be able to compete. When you say like, there's no way we can compete. So we will have to collaborate with them to get that research funds, research expertise, that kind of faculty, that kind of labs. We will need that. Third, I think is what Piyush also mentioned, that it has to be more industry linked. We will have to figure ways where students have a clear path after the education. What can be done is, I think, in India, what we can do is deregulate a bit, which is happening, and more deregulation at higher education would get more competition coming in, which will be like I think free markets would help in this place as well, and we'll see much better outcomes coming, where will be much more in industry participation. We are seeing some examples now also where they are not calling themselves as a university, but still providing that kind of upskilling courses and helping the students. And once those things succeed, if they're getting jobs, I don't think students really care about the degree or diploma if the industry doesn't care about it. So that part. And I think third part is going to be always, when you talk about cross-border, there are a lot of laws which are involved. So those laws have to be aligned with what the country is expecting. If you expect a lot of students to come to India, what you said, that we would want the students to get same kind of treatment what we expect our students to get there. So I'm trying to sum it up in a very small manner, but all of these things would be requiring a nuanced approach. Each one should be looked at in depth, and it's going to be a longer process. I can say that if something is expected that tomorrow we'll start attracting troves of Indians, we'll start having IITs and IIMs all across the world, it's not going to happen. It's going to take we will need to have a longer time frame to launch all of these things. Yeah.
I just want to weigh in on this question. So, firstly, some factual clarifications. If you go to Malaysia, there are people who walk into a hospital and specifically ask for a doctor from Manipal. So Manipal has been running a medical college in Malaysia for 25 years now. 1/3 of all doctors in Malaysia are Manipal educated. And not just educated, even the average taxi driver in Malaysia will tell you that they prefer a Manipal doctor. Right? So that's an example of an Indian export. Similarly, if you go to the Amity University campus in Dubai, at the entrance they have this giant TV, and the TV says the sun never sets on Amity. Okay, so, and the point they're making is they have a campus in New York, in London, in Dubai, in India, of course. So the sun never sets on Amity. And by the way, all the campuses have students. It's filled with students. It's not like just there.
Even the New York campus has...
Sorry?
Even the New York campus has students.
Even the New York campus has
American students.
Sorry?
American students.
Yes, that includes India, largely Indian diaspora, but also attracts foreign students. Similarly, in Amsterdam, the only private school, private international school, is run by Amity. Okay, and the context to that was when Brexit happened, Amsterdam was pitching companies to relocate to Amsterdam. Expats said, you don't even have an international school, we don't want to send them to the local school. So there was a 5 million grant from the Amsterdam government. Amity took the grant, set up the school. It's a wonderful place. It has 4,000 students. It's like in a forest area and stuff like that. Of course, then there's BITS Pilani in Dubai and so on. Manipal also runs a medical college in Antigua, which again has about 600 to 800 students, big operation. So my point here is private Indian institutions have been exporting education for a good amount of time, fairly successfully. It can be scaled, obviously. The other guy is SP Jain Global. SP Jain Global has campuses in Australia, Singapore, India, Dubai, and now set up in London recently. So we can export education, but what these guys have done is, firstly, they're private, so it's faster, easier to do things. Secondly, I disagree on the research point because if you look at all of these institutions, they're not really research heavyweights. Okay, they do research, but they're not really research heavyweights. The reason they're able to succeed is they're focused on teaching and jobs, right, as a solution, as against necessarily research. For example, Manipal has a teaching hospital. They make you a good doctor, right? So their teachers are not known for having published a lot of research. So there are alternate routes to do this. The challenge, however, for India is that our best institutions are government owned. So everything is complicated. It's difficult to do it. But the key takeaway is that the countries that have succeeded in this have been able to build the brand of the country itself. Right? So, for example, Australia, in fact, even here there are Australian government entities here at this session pitching their businesses, companies, etc. So, brand India, and then of course adjusting curriculum, etc., I think can get us there. Yeah.
I think really brilliant use cases, Mohan, in terms of, I mean, I didn't know about the Malaysia point, so that is good to know that, the Malaysians prefer doctor from Manipal. I think in my case, as long as it's a doctor who knows his stuff, is good enough. We don't call up doctors from AIMS to come and do a checkup for us, but if it's good, if it's from AIMS, it's not too bad. No, but Piyush, I just want to come back to you on this point. So, I think what we've established is that there are a few use cases from private institutions that have set up shops abroad and are exporting education, so which is great for Indian investments, foreign investments, etc. But at the same time, the best ones are the government ones, right? You have the IITs, you have the IIMs, and of course the state-run colleges as well. So what do we need to do? Because I think over there, what even Sumeet was talking about and what we were discussing about research aspect, I think your point is valid to an extent that they are able to get the job done for maybe Indian diaspora, probably mostly Indian diaspora, which wants something similar or they want to be closer to home. But if you were to attract PhDs or if you were to attract high professional courses, let's say you look at medicine, you look at law, you look at engineering, you look at STEM in general, that usually is, decided on the rankings of how many papers, and not even, let's say, of course, the quantity, but even the quality of papers. And how are you investing your time and creating path-breaking research, which is moving the needle forward? I think over there, of course, your traditional schools are faring far better. Some of them are, in fact, government-owned, even in the US and Europe and UK as well. So, what I want to ask you, Piyush, is should we compete with that market? Or what Mohan has said that we don't need to because there is a different market available. You can cater to the middle income countries, not the very high income countries, but at least you can start with the middle income countries, attract the talent over there, do a good job with the degrees, so that they're able to get the jobs. You may not be great with very high in-depth research, but that is not needed. I mean, most of us haven't really, I mean, some of us may have, but it's not a necessary part. Okay, you have to have publish a lot, you have to do a deep research to be able to do something. Even IIMs for that matter, or, I mean, at the end of the day, you need something which is pragmatic, practical to work on the ground. So should we alter our ambitions and our goals, or should we aim for both?
No, so I think very well said that some of the top brands in India are public institutions, and again coming back to the the original thought process. What is the opportunity? How are we defining opportunity? What is the objective? Why do I want to open an IIT New York, for example, right? That is, I think, that's the clarity which will give the answer, right? If I am doing that to build the brand of IIT further, great. If I'm trying to use that, that I want to get money, that's a profit-making venture for me. Yeah. Or am I again looking at, where is it that there is a gap in education that I'm trying to plug in and solve? So I think the decision is not based on where, where to go. It's, I think, what opportunity am I chasing? Right. wherever that opportunity is, that's where those institutions need to go. And I think right now, even from the mindset of some of the top schools in India, and I do get to interact with their people, is the third, which is to be able to go and plug in education gaps where that kind of education is not existing. And hence, most of the public universities in India, they have plans of going into, smaller countries or more countries which are slightly, maybe 5, 10, 15 years behind the growth curve to India, uh, where there is a higher Indian diaspora. So that's the kind of mindset that they have kept, that we will plug in the gap in education and we will cash on the brand visibility wherever there's a higher Indian diaspora. Because then if an IIT is, let's say, open in like Lagos, there are more than I think 15, 20,000 Indian families settled in Lagos. And so for that kind of an institute, that kind of a brand to be in Nigeria, which has a large population, creates for great talent to come into that university, which is missing great schools as well. So I think that's the mindset with which a lot of Indian public universities are looking at, which I think is very fair, to the fact that they're solving a real problem, and cashing on the already growing Indian diaspora. The private universities, of course, they look at also opportunities of making fast break evens because on the infrastructure that they are investing into, and it becomes a really important factor for them, because their businesses are not subsidized by any. And then be it Manipal universities, be it Amity University, they look at it more from a capitalistic and a return kind of point of view. SP Jindal has business school and modern business branches around the world. So a lot of Indian private universities, of course, have done it successfully and profitably. But for the public universities, I think they're not profit is, or like revenue is not the goal that they're chasing. So it's unfair to kind of compare them on the same metrics. But yes, I think both need to kind of go in their own individual opportunities that they're chasing. So.
Uh, Sumit, just taking on from where Piyush and Mohan are just coming along is, I think if you look at the education institutions which are operating right now abroad, right? How do they compare with their global counterparts over there in terms of, okay, they're trying to solve a problem, but I think to the point which Piyush brought up, uh, I think in going back to the same point is, okay, how do we move that needle ahead? So what is it that we need to do we need to invest in? Because I think it's good that we're talking about Indian students going abroad, but even within India, there's a lot more work to be done, right? With quality of education, with infrastructure, etc. So can we look at, let's say, government setting up an IIT or IIM abroad, having an MOU with the country? Do you foresee students, because you work with a lot of them who want to go abroad and study, if you give them an option that, okay, you go to an IIT in, let's say, Dubai, or you go to an IIT in Malaysia, would they be interested? Do you think Indian students would want to do that?
There will always be some people who would be open to doing this. We need to know why the students are actually going abroad to study. One of the major reason is not just the education. It's also the opportunities that come after the education. And if we really want to compete, we will have to build those opportunities here. Those opportunities are not going to come just by skilling, upskilling. It will come by having a stronger economy and a stronger participation of the industry. And I'm quite confident that we will see that happening with the growth that we are on. It will take its own course. It's not something that we can like quickly move it, but it's going to take its own course. But we will see that few years down, people are going to go irrespective of what opportunity they get abroad after their course. If they're getting that great opportunity back in India, they will focus a lot more on what kind of quality education they're getting at what university. There again, if it's something like what you're saying, an IIT setting up a campus in Malaysia, and if it makes sense for them to actually have a good cross-cultural collaboration, they would go there. That's always like people love that kind of exposure. So for exposure, they will definitely go there. What are the previous question that was there?
To this only, I think, how are the brands also recognized? Like, Indian education brands? Is there a brand recall abroad? Is there something you see?
No, I think Indian students are very well known for the hard work and the rigor that they bring to any kind of field. So that's, I think, a very strong point. I think as Mohan said about doctors, Indian doctors, I think I agree with that. Also, even in the US, people prefer Indian doctors. Also, with math teachers, the people do prefer Chinese, Indian, Korean math teachers. That's a very common thing. A lot of you would see a lot of startups which are teaching math from India are very successful in teaching there. Is pure because of this that we are able to do it. It's at a much, I would say, at a primary level, but we do have that certain brand. So we would probably need to capitalize on those aspects there.
Right.
Just want to make one final point, which is, see, essentially, if you take the Indian cricket team, let's say you call Virat Kohli, you send him to Europe and say play football. That's the problem, right? So you play what you're good at and build to your advantage. So to give you specific examples, India can go out, set up universities and teach Gandhian studies, yoga, the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of medicine because there's Ayurveda, and even public infrastructure. So anything to do with UPI, fintech, public goods.
DPIs. Yeah.
So that's the game, right? So if you go out and say, I'll set up an engineering college and teach whatever, mechanical engineering, that's like, if there's a kid in the Midwest in the US, why would they want to learn it from India, right? So you're not playing to any strength. So the game is also in fine-tuning that, right? So choose your geography, choose the things you're really good at and export it. For example, one of the oddities for me is India is excellent at medical education, doctors, world over, there are Indian doctors. But those are not the institutions going out. The first guys to go out is IITs, right? It's an unwinnable battle, right? There's so many engineering schools in the world. What's your reason to win? So that's my
The
point.
market is already saturated, you're saying. You have to, I mean, it's interesting you spoke about what is more attuned to India and what is more native to India. I think that's something which we could definitely teach.